Have you ever seen an 80-year-old man, who walks with the energy of someone half his age, stands tall with perfect posture, and wears a smile that radiates pure life? I met someone just like that. His name is Richard. He's 83. He lives alone in a cozy wooden cabin just outside Seattle. Every morning, he brews his own coffee, tends to his garden, and then walks to the local park to do pull-ups. Yes, pull-ups. The kind most 20-year-olds would hesitate to try. When I asked him what his secret was, he simply smiled and said, "The human body doesn't grow weak from age. It grows weak when we stop using it." Every year, millions of older adults in America slowly lose the ability to rise from a chair, climb a set of stairs, or even balance on their own 2 feet. Not because they're sick, but because their muscles are fading, silently, without warning. Did you know? After the age of 30, we lose about 1% of our muscle mass each year. By 80, that can add up to a loss of up to 50%, if nothing is done to stop it. That's not just sad. It's a wake-up call. But here's the powerful truth science now confirms. Losing muscle doesn't have to be inevitable with age. You can slow it down, even reverse it, at any age. Puzzle piece. And here's the surprising part, most of us have it completely wrong when it comes to staying strong as we get older. 93% of older Americans, maybe your parents, or even your future self, are making the same simple mistakes every day that speed up muscle loss dramatically. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 powerful, science-backed strategies that help you retain, and even rebuild, muscle strength in your 70s, 80s, and beyond. No gym memberships. No heavy weights. Just a shift in how you see your body, and how you treat it starting today. Direct hit. And coming up next, you'll discover the first key, a form of stress that might sound harmful, but is actually a secret weapon for building a younger, more resilient body. Are you ready? Let's begin this journey, together. 1. The shocking truth, why muscle loss isn't just about aging. When we think about aging, most of us imagine wrinkles, gray hair, and a slower pace of life. But what we often don't realize is that one of the most dangerous parts of growing older is something we can't see happening, until it's too late. I'm talking about muscle loss. Now, it's true that aging plays a role. After we hit 30, we begin to lose about 1% of our muscle mass each year. That adds up quickly. By the time we're 70 or 80, it can feel like our strength has slipped away almost overnight. But here's what most people don't know. Muscle loss isn't just a side effect of getting older. It's a consequence of how we live as we age. Let me tell you about Linda. She's 76. A retired librarian. Sweet, quiet, loves to read mystery novels. For most of her life, she was healthy, active, even took daily walks around her neighborhood. But over the past 2 years, something changed. She started avoiding stairs. Then stopped walking as much. Then needed help getting up from the couch. Her doctor told her, it's just part of aging. But when a physical therapist evaluated her, the truth was clear. Linda wasn't weak because of her age. She was weak because her muscles hadn't been challenged in years. Her body simply responded to what it was given, less movement, less effort, and eventually, less strength. That's the real shock. The human body is remarkably adaptive. It responds to the signals we give it. If we use our muscles, they stay. If we stop using them, they disappear, quietly, but surely. The good news is, this also works in reverse. Even in your 70s, 80s, and beyond, your muscles are still capable of growth. Your body still listens. And with the right approach, it will respond. So here's the first lesson. Muscle doesn't vanish because we get old. It vanishes because we stop asking it to stay. And if you're wondering how to send your body the right signals again, how to activate those muscles, even gently, then you'll want to hear what comes next. Because in the next part of our journey, we'll talk about a surprising tool used by people in their 80s and 90s who still hike, swim, and stay independent. It's called hormetic stress, a tiny bit of pressure that makes your body stronger, not weaker. Let's explore how it works. 2. Harnessing hormetic stress, cold, heat, and fasting like a superhuman. A few years ago, I visited a small wellness retreat tucked away in the Colorado mountains. It was late autumn, crisp and quiet. Each morning, a group of people, mostly in their 60s and 70s, would gather by the lake. And then, without hesitation, they'd step into the freezing water. Not for long. Just 30 to 60 seconds. I watched in disbelief. But what struck me more than the cold was their energy. These were people who moved with purpose. Who smiled more, stood straighter, and seemed 10 years younger than their age. One of them, a 74-year-old named George, noticed my curious stare and said with a grin, "It's uncomfortable, sure. But that's the point. Our bodies need a little challenge to stay strong." That's when I first heard the term hormetic stress. Hormesis is the idea that small, controlled doses of stress, the right kind of stress, can actually make us stronger. It's like how lifting a heavy object causes microscopic tears in our muscles, which then rebuild stronger. The same principle applies beyond the gym. Let's look at 3 kinds of hormetic stress that are simple, safe, and incredibly powerful for aging well. First, cold exposure. Finishing your shower with just 30 seconds of cold water can activate something called brown fat. This helps regulate your metabolism and sparks a hormonal response that protects muscle tissue from breakdown. It doesn't take much, just a quick shock to remind your body it's still alive and needed. Second, heat exposure. Regular sauna sessions or hot baths can stimulate heat shock proteins. These special proteins help repair damaged muscle cells and prevent further loss. In Finland, where sauna culture is strong, a long-term study found that frequent sauna users had up to 40% less muscle loss over 10 years. Third, intermittent fasting. This one's not about skipping meals. It's about eating within a consistent window, say 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and letting your body rest from digestion the rest of the time. This short break triggers a powerful process called autophagy, where your body cleans up damaged cells and boosts muscle quality. None of these practices are extreme. In fact, they're most effective in small, consistent doses. That's what makes them so beautiful. They don't require you to lift heavy weights or change your life overnight. Just a little bit of challenge. A little bit of controlled discomfort. And here's the small but powerful lesson. Sometimes, the very things we avoid, the cold, the heat, the hunger, are the things our body needs most to thrive. Now, you might be wondering, if I'm doing all this right, am I also feeding my body at the right time to make it count? Because as it turns out, when you eat, your protein matters just as much as what you eat. Let's talk about that next. 3. Timing is everything. The protein distribution strategy that builds muscle after 70. A few months ago, I had coffee with a woman named Margaret. She's 79, bright-eyed, and sharp as a tack. We were talking about her efforts to stay strong as she got older, and she proudly told me, "I eat plenty of protein. Every night, I make sure to have a big steak or a piece of salmon for dinner." And she was right, she was eating a good amount. But then I asked, what about breakfast or lunch? She paused, thought for a second, and said, usually just toast or maybe soup. I save the good stuff for the evening. Margaret's story is actually pretty common. A lot of older adults do the exact same thing. They front-load their protein into one big meal, usually at dinner. But here's the thing, your muscles don't work on a once-a-day clock. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at using protein. Scientists call this anabolic resistance. It means that instead of turning protein into muscle right away, our aging bodies need more frequent reminders, and consistent supply, to keep the process going. Imagine your muscles are like a garden. You wouldn't dump all the water at night and hope it lasts all day, right? You'd water them regularly, morning, noon, and evening, so they can grow and stay strong. Here's what the latest research suggests. The optimal approach is to aim for 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein at each meal. Let me show you what that might look like. Breakfast: a spinach and mushroom omelette with 2 eggs, a side of Greek yogurt, and a slice of whole grain toast, about 30 grams. Lunch: grilled chicken salad with quinoa and avocado, again, around 30 grams. Dinner: baked salmon with roasted vegetables and a small sweet potato, 30 grams or more. You don't need protein shakes or expensive powders, unless they make things easier. You just need consistency. In one study from the University of Texas, older adults who spread out their protein across the day gained 1.2 pounds of lean muscle over 12 weeks, without changing anything else in their routine. That's powerful. So here's today's takeaway. It's not just what you eat, it's when you eat it that helps your muscles stay alive and well. Margaret, by the way, started adding a little more protein to her breakfast and lunch. A few months later, she emailed me to say her balance had improved, and she felt steadier getting in and out of the tub. I didn't expect something so small to make such a difference, she wrote. And she's right, small changes often bring the biggest wins. Speaking of small things with big impact. There's one nutrient most people think is only about bones, but it's actually essential for muscle strength too. Let's talk about that next. 4. The muscle vitamin D dilemma. How much do you really need? A few winters ago, I visited my Aunt Carol in Michigan. She's 82, lives alone, and has always been independent, the kind of woman who still insists on shoveling her own snow. But that year, things had changed. She told me her legs felt weaker, and that she'd recently stumbled while stepping off her porch. It's just age, she said with a shrug. But something didn't feel right. Later that week, I convinced her to go in for a simple blood test. A few days later, the results came back. Her vitamin D levels were dangerously low, less than 15 nanograms per milliliter. Far below what her body needed to stay strong. We often think of vitamin D as the bone vitamin, and yes, it does help with calcium absorption and bone density. But here's what most people don't realize. Vitamin D also plays a direct role in muscle strength, coordination, and recovery. Your muscles actually have vitamin D receptors, little gateways that, when activated, help your body build and maintain lean muscle tissue. When you don't have enough, those pathways start to shut down. That's when balance gets shaky, stairs feel harder, and muscles don't bounce back like they used to. Here's the tricky part: the older we get, the harder it is to make vitamin D from sunlight. By age 70, our skin produces 50% less vitamin D than it did when we were young, even with the same amount of sun exposure. So how much do you really need? Well, the standard recommendation is 600 IU per day. But studies now show that most older adults need between 2,000 and 4,000 IU daily to reach optimal levels, especially if they live in colder climates or spend most of their time indoors. You can get some from fatty fish like salmon, egg yolks, or fortified milk. But food alone usually isn't enough. The best approach? Get your levels tested. A simple blood test can tell you where you stand. Aim for at least 40 nanograms per milliliter, that's the sweet spot for muscle health. And if you supplement, pair your vitamin D3 with vitamin K2, it helps guide calcium to your bones instead of your arteries. Aunt Carol started supplementing with D3 plus K2, spent more time by her sunny window each morning, and added a bit more salmon to her weekly meals. 3 months later, she was back to her snow shovel, and walking with more confidence than she had in years. So here's the quiet truth. Sometimes, the missing link to your strength isn't more exercise, it's a vitamin you didn't know you were low on. And while we're on the topic of what's silently stealing strength from the inside, there's something else, something that millions of people carry in their bodies without knowing it. It's called chronic inflammation. And it may be the real reason why your muscles feel tired, slow, and stiff. Let's take a closer look. 5. Inflammation is the real muscle killer, the silent saboteur after 60. Not long ago, I met a man named Howard. He was 68, retired, and had just started lifting light weights at his local gym. He was doing everything right, walking daily, eating plenty of protein, even getting enough sleep. But after a few months, he was frustrated. "I feel tired all the time," he told me. "And no matter what I do, I'm not getting stronger. It's like my body isn't listening." So he did something most people never think to do. He got a blood test, and it revealed that his inflammation levels were sky-high. Specifically, a marker called hsCRP, a signal that the body is under constant low-grade stress. This wasn't the sharp, obvious inflammation you get from a twisted ankle or a cold. This was silent inflammation, the kind that lingers in the background, slowly breaking things down over time. And here's the thing. Chronic inflammation is one of the most overlooked causes of muscle loss after age 60. When your body is inflamed, it shifts into defense mode. Instead of building muscle, it starts breaking it down, redirecting energy to fight off what it thinks is a threat. Even if you're eating right and exercising, that invisible fire inside can cancel out your progress. So where does this inflammation come from? Well, sometimes it's linked to gut health. An unbalanced microbiome can leak inflammatory compounds into your bloodstream. Sometimes it's poor sleep. Even one bad night can spike inflammation by up to 40%. And often, it's hidden in the foods we eat, processed oils, too much sugar, or not enough fiber. The good news is, it can be reversed. Here's what Howard did. He focused on sleeping better, 7 to 8 hours a night in a completely dark room. He added fermented foods like kefir and sauerkraut to heal his gut. He swapped processed snacks for berries, leafy greens, turmeric, and olive oil. And twice a week, he took slow, mindful walks instead of intense cardio. 3 months later, he wasn't just stronger, he felt calmer, clearer, and more in control of his body again. So the small lesson here is this. It's not always about doing more. Sometimes, it's about reducing the silent damage happening underneath. Now that we've talked about what weakens muscle quietly from within, let's switch gears and talk about something you can add, safely and effectively, to help your body build muscle better. No, not a new diet. We're talking about a handful of powerful micronutrients that many people are missing, and that might just be the upgrade your muscles are waiting for. 6. Smart supplementing, the most overlooked nutrients that keep your muscles young. When we think about staying strong as we age, most of us focus on the big stuff, protein, exercise, maybe even getting more sleep. But sometimes, the secret lies in the small things, the trace minerals and nutrients that quietly support every muscle contraction, every step, every lift of the arm. I remember talking to James, a 72-year-old retired engineer who had recently joined a beginner strength class at his community center. He told me, "I'm doing everything right, but I still feel weaker than I should. My grip is poor, and I tire out so fast." Out of curiosity, he took a micronutrient test, something most people never think to do. What came back surprised him. He was low in magnesium, B12, and zinc, 3 key nutrients that play a huge role in muscle function. Let's break them down. Magnesium is sometimes called the muscle mineral. It's involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions, many of them tied to muscle contraction and recovery. Yet, over 70% of older adults are mildly deficient, often without knowing it. The result? Cramping, fatigue, and slower strength gains. Foods like dark leafy greens, almonds, and pumpkin seeds can help, but many older adults benefit from supplementing with magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate, which are easier on the stomach and better absorbed. Vitamin B12, especially in its methylated form, methylcobalamin, supports nerve function and muscle energy. As we age, we absorb B12 less efficiently, especially if we take acid blockers or metformin. Low B12 often shows up as muscle weakness, numbness, or poor balance, things we easily chalk up to just getting old. Creatine is another powerhouse, and no, it's not just for bodybuilders. Research shows that older adults who take 3 to 5 grams of creatine per day can gain more muscle, improve strength, and even boost brain function, especially when paired with resistance training. It's one of the most well-studied and safe supplements around. And then we have the trace minerals, zinc, selenium, chromium, small but mighty players that support protein synthesis, insulin sensitivity, and recovery. In a 5-year study, seniors with optimal levels of these minerals retained over 20% more muscle mass than those with deficiencies. The common thread? Without these behind-the-scenes nutrients, your body struggles to turn good habits into real results. James added just 3 things to his routine: magnesium before bed, B12 in the morning, and a daily scoop of creatine after his walks. 3 months later, his handshake was firmer, his energy higher, and he even started helping his neighbors carry groceries again, something he hadn't done in years. So the small but powerful reminder is this. Sometimes, it's not about working harder, it's about giving your body the raw materials it needs to work better. But even when your nutrition is on point, there's another factor that affects your ability to move with strength and confidence, and it doesn't start in your muscles. It starts in your brain. Up next, let's talk about a part of aging most people don't see coming. The quiet breakdown between your nerves and your muscles, and how to keep that connection alive. 7. Nerve-muscle connection, the forgotten secret behind strength. A few years ago, I met Eleanor at a senior fitness class. She was 75, full of life, always smiling, but she told me something that stuck with me. "I'm not afraid of getting older," she said. "I'm afraid of falling." What surprised me was that Eleanor wasn't weak. She exercised regularly, ate well, and had no major health issues. But lately, she had noticed something strange. She'd hesitate before stepping off a curb. Her hands felt slower to respond. And sometimes, she'd reach for something and miss by an inch. It wasn't her strength that was fading, it was her coordination. That's when I shared something with her that most people don't know. Your muscles don't work alone. They rely on a powerful connection with your nervous system, a link called the neuromuscular junction. Think of it like a phone line between your brain and your muscles. Every time you move, whether it's lifting a glass of water or getting out of a chair, your brain sends a signal through this line. But as we age, this signal gets weaker. The wires fray. The connection fades. Even if your muscles are strong on paper, if your brain can't reach them clearly, they won't respond the way they used to. So how do we keep that connection sharp? Interestingly, the answer isn't just lifting weights. It's practicing movement with precision and coordination. Here's what Eleanor started doing. She signed up for a Tai Chi class twice a week. The slow, deliberate movements challenged her brain and body to stay in sync. She also played table tennis every Saturday with her grandson, which, it turns out, is one of the best activities for keeping reflexes and hand-eye coordination sharp. And the results? Her balance improved. Her reaction time got faster. And best of all, her confidence came back. Researchers have found that these kinds of skill-based movements, things like dancing, tennis, or even learning new choreography, help preserve the health of neuromuscular junctions far better than repetitive walking or weightlifting alone. And if you want to go even deeper, there are supplements that support this connection too. Compounds like acetyl-L-carnitine and alpha-lipoic acid have been shown to protect nerve cells. And specific forms of vitamin B1, like benfotiamine, help maintain the signals that fire your muscles into action. There are even breathing techniques, like box breathing, that stimulate the vagus nerve, which plays a quiet but powerful role in keeping your brain and body working together. Eleanor now starts each morning with 5 minutes of deep breathing, a short balance drill, and a walk where she purposely changes direction, steps over curbs, and engages her senses. And here's what she told me not long ago. I may be in my 70s, but I feel more connected to my body now than I did in my 50s. So here's today's reminder. Staying strong isn't just about building muscle. It's about keeping the line open between your brain and your body, and practicing movements that keep that line clear. And if you're wondering how to bring everything we've talked about together, movement, nutrition, coordination, there's one habit that ties it all. It's the single most powerful way to fight aging at its root. And yes, it involves weights. But not the way you might think. Let's talk about the magic of progressive resistance training, and why it might be the most important thing you can do, starting today. 8. Progressive overload after 60, the real anti-aging exercise protocol. A few years back, I met Thomas, 67 years old, a retired school principal with a kind face and a bookshelf full of mystery novels. When we first spoke, he told me something I've heard from so many others. I walk every day, I do light stretching, but I still feel like I'm shrinking, like my body's just getting softer. And he wasn't wrong. He was doing something, just not the right thing for what his body truly needed. So I asked him a simple question. When was the last time your muscles were actually challenged? He thought for a moment, smiled, and said, college. That's when I introduced him to a principle that changed his life. Progressive overload. It sounds technical, but it's simple. Progressive overload means gradually increasing the demand on your muscles over time, so they have a reason to grow stronger. Think of it this way, muscles are like employees. If you give them the same job every day, they stop trying. But if you gently push them, add a little more responsibility, they rise to the occasion. Thomas started small, using just resistance bands and bodyweight exercises in his living room. He did wall push-ups, chair squats, and step-ups on the stairs. Twice a week, 30 minutes each time. Every couple of weeks, he added just a bit more, a heavier band, a few more reps, a slightly slower pace on the way down. That part, the lowering phase or eccentric movement, turned out to be especially effective. It creates deep muscle tension without straining the joints. 3 months later, Thomas could do a full set of proper squats, get up from the floor without help, and, for the first time in years, lift his grandkids up with ease. And here's what the science says. Older adults who practice high-effort resistance training just twice a week, even starting in their 70s or 80s, can see dramatic improvements in muscle size, strength, balance, blood sugar control, and even brain function. No need for heavy weights or fancy equipment. Just the commitment to keep showing up, and the courage to challenge yourself, bit by bit. The most common mistake? Doing the same low-effort exercises over and over again, thinking it's safe. But in truth, not progressing is what keeps people stuck, and slowly getting weaker. Thomas now has a little notebook where he tracks his workouts. Every page shows small improvements, a few more reps, better form, a new movement learned. And to him, that notebook is just as meaningful as a doctor's report. Maybe more. So here's today's truth. You don't have to lift heavy to stay strong, but you do have to lift with intention. And now that we've covered all the habits, from mindset to movement, from nutrients to nervous system, you might be wondering, how do I tie all of this together into something I can actually do, every day? That's exactly where we're headed next. Let's put the pieces together into your very own personal muscle blueprint, simple, trackable, and built to keep you strong for years to come. 9. The missing link, why mindset and community keep you stronger longer. A few months ago, I visited a small town in California where a group of retirees met every morning in the park. No matter the weather, sunshine, fog, even light rain, they'd gather at 7 a.m. sharp. Not for a workout class. Not for yoga. Just to walk, talk, stretch a little, and start their day together. That's where I met Susan, 81 years old, wearing bright pink sneakers and laughing like someone half her age. She told me, I come here for the movement, sure. But mostly, I come for them. And as we talked more, I realized something powerful. Staying strong isn't just physical, it's deeply emotional, too. Because your mindset, the way you see yourself, and your place in the world, has a very real impact on your strength, your energy, and even your longevity. We now know that loneliness is just as damaging to your health as smoking or obesity. And studies show that people who stay socially connected, even just with one or two close friends, experience slower muscle loss, better recovery, and stronger motivation to keep up healthy habits. When we feel seen, valued, and supported, we move more. We show up for ourselves. And more importantly, we keep going, even on the days we don't feel like it. And then there's mindset. How we talk to ourselves. What we believe about aging. If we believe that getting older means getting weaker, our bodies tend to follow that script. But if we see age as a season of strength, wisdom, and resilience, the outcomes are entirely different. I've seen it firsthand. A gentleman named Robert, 85, recovering from a hip replacement, once told me, "My doctor gave me the exercises. But my neighbor gave me the belief I could do them." That's the missing link for so many people. It's not another diet. It's not another workout. It's hope. It's connection. It's the quiet motivation that comes from knowing you're not in this alone. So if you're starting this journey, or already on it, consider this. Join a walking group. Call a friend and invite them to stretch with you over Zoom. Or just tell someone, "Hey, I'm working on getting stronger again." Because the strongest people I've ever met, they rarely walk this path alone. And here's the simple lesson. Muscle isn't just built with movement, it's built with meaning. Now, as we come to the final part of this journey, let's bring everything together. You've learned the tools, the habits, the science. But how do you turn all of that into a plan that fits your life, your body, your pace? Up next, your personalized muscle blueprint. Let's make it real. 10. Your personalized muscle blueprint, tracking, testing, and tailoring your plan. One of the most inspiring people I've ever met was Frank, a quiet, thoughtful man in his early 70s, who'd recently lost his wife. When we first spoke, he told me, "I want to be strong. Not just for me, but for my grandkids. I want to pick them up, not sit on the sidelines." But he also admitted something many people feel. There's so much information out there. I don't know where to start. So we sat down together, not to build a perfect plan, but a personal one, something that made sense for his life, his body, and his goals. And that's what I want to help you do, too. Because everything we've talked about, the habits, the movement, the nutrition, the mindset, they work best when you can see your progress, adjust as you go, and stay connected to your why. Here's how you build your muscle blueprint. Step 1. Get a clear picture of where you are now. That might mean getting a simple blood test for key markers, like vitamin D, B12, magnesium, and HSCRP, your inflammation marker. It could also mean doing a few strength basics at home. How many times can you sit down and stand up from a chair in 30 seconds? Can you hold a wall squat for 15 seconds? How steady do you feel standing on one foot? This isn't a test to judge yourself, it's a starting point. Step 2. Choose 2 or 3 habits from this series that feel manageable. Maybe it's walking with intention. Maybe it's spreading out your protein. Or maybe it's finally starting that twice-a-week strength routine. Small steps. Done consistently. That's the secret. Step 3. Track something simple. Frank used a little spiral notebook. He wrote down every time he walked, stretched, or took his supplements. Not to be perfect, but to stay present. Others use an app, a calendar, or even post-it notes on the fridge. The point is, what gets tracked, gets tweaked, and what gets tweaked, improves. Step 4. Revisit your plan every 4 to 6 weeks. Are you stronger? Sleeping better? Moving easier? If yes, great, keep going. If not, don't worry. Adjust. Add. Subtract. Your body is always giving you feedback, we just have to listen. Frank, by the way, stuck to 3 simple habits. Daily protein at breakfast, resistance bands twice a week, and 5 minutes of breathing each morning. 6 months later, he emailed me a photo, lifting his 4-year-old grandson high in the air, with a grin that said everything. So here's the final lesson. There is no perfect program. Only a personal one, built with care, patience, and your own rhythm in mind. And that's what makes it sustainable. Now, before we close, I want to remind you of something important. This journey, toward strength, energy, and independence, it's not just for the young. It's for the willing. And if you've made it this far, you already have what it takes. Because change doesn't start in the gym. It starts with a decision. One moment of yes. So, which habit will you start today? Let's finish this journey the way we started it, together.